Okay, so now for the second part of the video, we'll be doing the lighting and the rendering for this model. Just close this up. Okay, so we have set all the materials. We have set the views, this being view number 1, view number 2, view number 3, and I think let's make it to 2-point perspective and update this one. We don't need this fourth one, so we can delete this one. Okay, we have these three views. So let's start by setting up the lighting. So I'll be sharing the workflow that I follow while lighting the scene where we have a source of natural light. So let's jump into it. It's a rather simple workflow and we'll see. Okay, so let's start by going into settings. For the engine, I'll be using CPU, and for interactive, let's put on the start the interactive rendering. Keep the interactivity to medium. For the denoiser, I'll be using NVIDIA AI. And okay, and one thing that I would like to set before starting the scene is the sun angle. I want the light to enter my toilet, so let's see. For now, I think this will be fine. So I'll update the scene with this sunlight. Now let's start the interactive rendering. Okay, so the scene looks good. It still looks good, just a bit dim lit. So since we are setting up the lighting, so what I do is I switch on the material override and you can see that everything is blank. That is because the material override is writing the glass material too. So what we'll do, we'll choose this glass material and will tick can be overridden off. As soon as we take it off, see that something lights up. When I started the material override, I call the material turned into override color. You can override everything with single material too. I'll keep it with the default color. Now let's play a bit with maybe start playing with the exposure value, setting it to around 11. Now let's remember one thing that since the material overriding all the materials is near to white, so the color, the light that we see here is being reflected more. White color reflects the most. That's why we might get a brighter light here, but actually it might be not so bright. Also, another thing to keep in mind is that the emissive material does not show up because it's a material again, so it's also overridden by the default material. Another thing that we can do is we can choose this, go into the materials and switch this off too. So now we can see. So let's make it a bit brighter. Let's keep it on 2. Okay. So now this is how the scene is looking. I think can be a little better. We can maybe light it up a bit more because as soon as we switch on the material, it would go a bit dim. So let's make it around 10.5 maybe. Like it's up to you. Like what if you want to play more with shadows and light, so you might choose a bit higher exposure value so you get brighter on this side and some dark colors on this side. I would like to light up the scene, so I think this should be fine. Stick to this now. Okay, what you can do is you can just play with the values here. Okay, and play with it till you find a good enough value. Okay, so next thing that I'm gonna do is I'll be placing a dome light into my scene. Let's place it anywhere. Let's place it here. Now what I'm going to do is I'll go to the environment tab and we already have a texture here. I'll just right click and cut this texture. Instead of placing an HDRI in the dome light, I'll be placing this texture and I'll be pasting it as an instance. So whatever changes I make, now I can directly control it with dome light. Adaptive boxes tick in here. So what it does is now I can control the whatever changes I was able to make from the environment tab. Now I can make those changes directly from my dome light tab. First of all, it makes the light more adaptive, and second thing that it makes the render time less. Like it makes the rendering faster. Another thing that I would like to do is like this sunlight is looking way too brighter. What I'll do, I'll just move this a bit down. So I'll move it from white, pure white to somewhere around gray. And also I'll move this to a bit gray. Alright, I know it's not that visible what's happening, but trust me. Okay, so actually the lighting is something that can either make or break your renders. So it it's a very back and forth kind of a thing to do. You need to test with a lot of lighting settings to get the desired look out of your scene. I've done this a lot of times, so I know that how it's gonna look. That's why I'm doing these set of things. The workflow is normally the same I'm following right now. So once this is done, I place the lights here. I change the color of these lights. One thing that I would like to do, go into sunlight and increase the size multiplier to maybe around 10. It's mostly because I don't like sharp shadows being created into my scene. So increasing the size multiplier, it fades the shadows don't come that sharp. If I turn it to 0, the sharp shadows, if I increase it, you can increase it more than 10 also, but around 10 gives a good effect. So with 10, it's giving little blurred out edges of the shadows, and that is the kind of look I'm looking for. So once this is set, what I'll do is I'll go back to my settings and I'll switch off materials override just to see how the scene is looking for now. Okay, fine for now. Another thing that I would like to do is, although we have the settings with respect to exposure value and we have got a desired look, but to like automatically adjust these exposure value while rendering, what you can do is you can switch on the exposure value to auto and white balance to auto. But right now, as you can see, it's not letting me make them into automatic exposure value and automatic white balance. That is because first of all, the interactive rendering is on. So I'll turn this off. I've turned this off. As soon as I turn them off, you can see that I have the buttons for auto available. In some of the cases, it might be possible that you don't get these auto buttons, and in that case, what you can do is you can go into global illumination and make sure that the secondary rays in global illumination are set to light cache, and that should turn these on for you. Okay, now since this is done, and we have turned on exposure value to automatic, what I would like to do is I would like to run a test render. For that, okay, it's in CPU. For that, I'll turn my denoiser to V-Ray. I'll switch off the progressive render so that the bucket rendering is on. It's more faster and it's more accurate. So once that is switched on, now for now I'm just doing some test renders, so I'll just keep them at the lowest 600 by 450, and I will just try to render it out. Let's see how it looks. Oh, sorry, I switched on the interactive rendering. Switch it off again, make sure the settings are fine. Quality, I think for now I'll just keep it at low plus. I'll switch on rendering. Let's see. Now is the output. Okay, so this is what the render looks like. As you can see, that particular space is quite overexposed. So how to proceed further? One thing that I like about V-Ray is the Lightmix. Make sure it's to group instance. Like right now it does not matter, but when you place a lot of lights in the scene, it matters. So group them by group instances. And now what we'll do is we'll re-render the scene. So these are the results. Now let's just open the side panel for this. Side panel from here you can see that I only have the history tab on, and the renders that I take out are automatically saved into it. And then I'm able to run the A/B comparison thing into it. If it's not automatically open for you, you can go into options, you can go into history and click on enable. And also you can switch on autosave and autosave completed only, so that everything that you render does not save, but only the renders that you allowed to complete are saved into the history tab. Save and close, and you'll be able to see the history of your renders in here. As I was saying, what I like about V-Ray is this Lightmix. Click on it, and altogether you're able to control all the lights individually. For example, if I switch off the dome light, basically if I switch off the dome, this is what my render looks like. If I switch off the sunlight, this is what my render looks like. Environment is not playing any role because I've already removed the texture from environment and placed into dome light. If I switch it off, then I won't be able to see this here. Self illumination are for these, and rest is if you have any other kind of light. So let's play around with this and get a desired output. Before that, I would be going into the layers, and I'll go to exposure. In exposure, you find this tab called the highlight burn, which helps you reduce the overexposed value. Now, how do you know that the exposure value is in the correct range? You go to the view tab, and in color clamping, turn the force color clamping. Now you see this purple color, it shows the maximum overexposed spaces, and then as per a range, all these colors show different exposure values. So once you reduce the highlight burn, you see exposure, the overexposed spaces are reducing. So just reduce it to a certain level that you want your output to look like, because reducing it a lot reduces the overall brightness of your render too. So it makes you lose some details also. So let's reduce it to this level maybe. Then go to view tab, color clamping, switch this off, maybe a bit more this level, and then I increase the exposure a bit to compensate for the exposure that I've reduced with highlight burn, but not too much so that we don't overexpose them again. And another thing that I would like to increase is contrast, because as soon as I reduce highlight burn, it also makes my image lose contrast. You can play with other layers too, like you can add a filmic tone to it and then play with these settings to get the desired look. For me, this looks good enough, or maybe without this also it would be fine for me. So basically, it depends on you. It depends on personal choice how you want it to look like. You can add as many layers as you need from here. It's just like Photoshop. One thing about history that I like is that as soon as I render, it gets saved in here, and later on come into the history tab, open the previously rendered image and edit it and check the difference for you now. So like I have edited this, edited the exposure value. Now I can come back to the sunlight, maybe reduce it a bit more, or maybe keep it to the same value. I think reducing it would be a better option. 0.7 maybe. This looks fine to me. And for denoiser, I don't want to lose many details, so I think I'll keep it to 5. Once I have done this, I can load this into my history tab. And if I go to the A/B comparison thingy, you can see what my image was before and how it has changed. Can you see the major changes in this area? This is the overexposed image. This is the normal image that we uh, changed right now. Another thing I would like to do is I would like to let's switch this off to add the filmic tone. So I think this looks fine. Let's check the other two views also. How do they look with the same settings that I have right now? Check out the first scene, how it looks like. Forgot to add surrounding to my block. Let's add that too. Let me see something nice from the window too. I would be going to scatter, going to create myself. Let's try how the exterior looks now. I'm able to see something here. That's because the surface is not extending infinitely. So what we're gonna do, we add a infinite plane like this. It's coming out good. And I think the outside environment will also look good now with the grass and the trees. Okay, I think this is good. Let's do the final renderings. Let's keep it to high. To reduce the rendering time, one thing you can do is after switching the quality to high or high plus, I'll do it in high. Switch on the denoiser, Vray denoiser, and you can change the noise limit to around 5. Once the rendering is done, you can and you can change it yourself to the value that suits to you, so that you don't lose too much details and you don't get too much noise into your renders. And it reduces the time by a lot, reduces it by I think around 4 or 5 times. So increase the noise limit. I would like to, and this is fine, this is an auto render output. I would like to set it to 1920. All right, I don't think I'll be doing the scene number 2. It's not looking that good to me, so I'll just delete scene number 2. I've chosen a path to save the renders. Now all I need to do is do a batch render. Okay, so these are the final results. Display to exposed. This helps. I will reduce the exposure in this one. This looks good enough. This is the best thing about Lightmix. You can change it later on, even when the render is done. I think this way it looks more better. Reducing the dome light helps, brings out more contrast. So I think I'm going to keep it this way. And same for the other one. So here are the results. I hope the tutorial was helpful to you. If you like similar contents, do consider subscribing to my channel. See you in the next video.